Hi everybody and welcome to another Kalicube Tuesdays. Today with Katrina McKinnon, who we've had before on the show. Welcome, Katrina.
Thank you very much, Jason. I am thrilled to be here again.
Brilliant. A quick hello and we're good to go. Welcome to the show, Katrina McKinnon.
It's quite a few syllables to get into that, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, but it's really nicely rhythmed. Katrina McKinnon is very easy to sing. You've got the perfect name for a song. But today we're going to be talking about how to leverage AI in e-commerce content. What I love about this is last time you talked about how to create content at scale with humans. And now we're talking about creating content with AI. So it's going to be maybe a counter argument to what you were saying before, or in addition to, and we'll see. And I'm hugely interested to see how we can use AI for content, I would imagine, at scale for e-commerce. Next, before we get into that, I'm going to show you your brand SERP, which is always at the beginning of the show. Yeah, your name's great for singing. It's less good in the search results, but I wanted to show search generative experience because for people, when you ask Google to have a conversation with you about the person, it simply shows you the search results. It doesn't have a conversation about people at this time, which is July 2023, which I find hugely disappointing. Bing Chat has great conversations about people, which I quite enjoy because I think, the reason here is because of the ambiguity. Not of your name in particular, but of names in general. And I think branded search for people's personal names is going to be a huge question in the years to come. But that's my personal hobby horse, as we say. So I looked up your company, copysmiths.com. Is that the official name of the company, or is it just the domain name?
No, it's the official name, copysmiths.com.
But then you say jobs at Copysmiths and not copysmiths.com.
No. So yeah, the actual name is Copysmiths, you're right, but we try to use copysmiths.com because, funnily enough, there is another company called copysmiths.ai.
Which is appropriate for this episode, but it's terrible competition for you. But the search generative experience that we're looking at for copysmiths.com is actually quite good. It's a good description. It even tells me I can write to service@copysmiths.com to have my questions answered. Has it got that right?
Yeah. And the only reason why it's looking like that is because last time we spoke, I actually went and created a single profile. And I thought, I just have to have this one block of text that's very consistent that I can go and put into Crunchbase. So since I spoke to you last, we put it into Crunchbase and a few other places. We updated our socials, all sorts of places. So it was really consistent. And so it is an improvement on what it was last time. But as I think I'm speaking to the the preaching to the converted is that branded search is going to be massive. That's the holy grail. And especially we're seeing that with our clients is branded search, showing up for branded search is absolutely going to be the holy grail as we come through the next few years.
Yeah, and it's not only the Google business card, i.e. how Google represents you, which is actually pretty easy to sort out. It's also appearing for all of the branded terms around your company and also having search generative experience and Bing Chat, being able to bring people down the funnel by recommending your brand and then pulling them down the funnel so that by the time they get to your website, they already know what you do, what you offer, why you're credible, recommended by Google or Bing, which I love, but that's not the topic for today.
Can I just say one thing on that, though, is that I think it's going to be fascinating. You know how you just did that search for my name, Katrina McKinnon? Wouldn't it be fascinating if there was a chat box in the side that allowed an AI version of me to answer questions? So I have, thousands of videos available online and, I've written blog posts and, I produce a fair bit of content. And so I imagine one day, and again, for you, it would be amazing if instead of me sort of sending you a sneaky little email and saying, oh, Jason, could you just answer this one little question about this? I know it's in your website somewhere. It'd be amazing to be able to have that chat in Google search, for example, not just on your website, but to sort of see, I want this type of content from Katrina, or I need this kind of question answered from Jason, and to get that a mimic essentially to start the conversation.
Right. Well, there are a couple of things there. Number one is if your site answers all of these questions Google will pick it up and it will potentially be able to answer the questions for you within Google. And it seems to be coming from Google, so people will trust it as Google. But I do agree with the idea of a mini chatbot dedicated to a specific company or service or niche. And Andrea Volpini was talking about that with Bing Chat, you can actually get that. At some point with some very specific questions, it sends you to you.com for the answer with their chatbot.
Ah, right.
And the other thing, of course, is that at Kalicube, we're building your Kalicube virtual assistant. I call it Kalibot, but that's not a very accurate word for it, whereby people will be able to come to the site and ask directly on the site. But once again, they would have to come to the site. But it's going to be so exciting the next few years. Branded search, getting your voice out there to your customers through Google on your website. And as you say, searching a WordPress website is rubbish when you look at what you can get with a bot or even from Google.
Yeah, I imagine like to have an AI twin of myself as, a brand of my own, but have an AI twin of myself that was available online via Google that I had given authorship to. And there's a disclaimer that sort of says it's not really me. But if it's trained like you, if it's trained on thousands of hours of video or, the papers you've written or things like that, to be able to go and get that answer that's nearly good enough, that has that same tone of voice. And so maybe your sense of humor would come through with that sort of chatbot. Mine might be a bit more educational, a bit drier, but I'm very sort of earnest with my trying to educate people all the time. And I think a digital twin would be fascinating because it would cut out that whole need for blogging just about, because you would just keep feeding your digital twin new things that you had learned and that you thought and your sort of perspective on things. And so then we could get rid of blogging and then we just wouldn't need copysmiths.com.
Well, yeah, now, this isn't the topic for today, but it would be nice to just finish this off, is Kalibot is trained on 2 million words that I've said or written in the last couple of years. It knows everything that I've said or written. And now I'm just producing content, video and written, and feeding it to Kalibot as fast as we possibly can to try and get everything out of here and into Kalibot. So it becomes my twin, but better because it can remember everything and I keep forgetting, which is huge.
I would be fascinated to see that. When's it launching, Jason?
Well, I can share the private link with you and you can get Kalibot to answer questions and ask it to tell my jokes, see what comes out.
Yeah. I wonder if I can get it to sing at the end of every answer. It would give me a little tune as well. You have to put a musical component into it.
That's brilliant. I would love that. And get it to say, can you sing the answer to me? And then it would sing, the Kalicube process is all about understanding deliverability and correctability, but it would probably find a better tune than I just did.
It'd be hilarious. Yeah.
But away from that particular aspect of AI and onto e-commerce content. Now, last time you were saying you have a team of 60 and they were creating content at scale, human beings creating content at scale. That's changed? Or do you still have
massively.
60?
No, it's massively changing. And we're seeing this in the sort of the offshoring outsourcing industry just all over the place as well, because I'm in touch with a bunch of other people who run larger human scale businesses. And we're seeing these efficiencies come through with AI that we couldn't produce before. So we've gone from a team of 60 down to 10, but we're still producing just as much content as we were, hundreds and hundreds of articles every month. But the quality has gone through the roof because what we do is we use the AI to produce a rough draft, and then our writers spend between, I'd say, 8 and 14 hours on each article, whereas before they might be spending 20, 30, 40 hours to write an article to a really high quality level. And then we've got editors and, content helpers and quality checkers and all these other people who do all these other things. But it's really assisted our writers. I'll give you one example. We do a lot of, our writers have to learn about our clients' products, and they might be a little bit more complicated than the guitar behind you. They might be a slightly more complex products, such as, the phone. I'm looking at a phone on my desk. Or a microphone. I've got a microphone. Okay. And so we can now feed in 2 different microphones from our clients' e-commerce store, and we can ask ChatGPT to compare and say, well, what are the differences? What are the similarities? What are the features? And how do those benefit different types of readers or potential customers? And so what the AI does is it leapfrogs our writers' understanding and their knowledge of the brand and the product. It leapfrogs them forward very quickly so they can create their own analysis. So they might say, oh, well, what are the differences between our two microphones for a podcaster? But then they might say, well, for a podcaster on a budget. Well, what about for a podcaster on a budget who really likes the color pink? What about for a podcaster on a budget who really likes the color pink, who's only 8 years old? And so you can, with the writer, with their own experience and understanding and nuanced understanding of behaviors of people and buying patterns, can really guide the AI to teach the writer very quickly about the differences in products. So that's one of the ways, whereas that might have taken hours to research and assimilate all that information. And then because we're human, we'd sort of go, well, the WJS295X has a slightly different, calibration or mic cover or to the, this. So yeah, that's how we're using the AI.
And what you've done is said, well, here's a product and here's a persona. So you describe the persona and the answers are significantly different depending on the persona you give it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I think this authorship factor is going to come in. This all ties in with this whole branded search thing and the authorship side of things. I think that when the writers are able to say, look, I'm really writing for this very specific audience, for this very specific blog post. So in the past, we might have done a buyer's guide on how to buy microphones. And, we sort of said, oh, we'll just get one that, works. Whereas now, because with AI, we can produce 10 different buyer's guides for the 10 different types of very nuanced audiences. So the content can become far more tailored and thus more compelling for a buyer, because there's more information packed into that single buyer's guide. And because the cost to produce that content is sort of fairly minimal now, you can get a pretty good starting point. It's still important to have the human involved because, again, the hallucinations are still there. But it's also, I think that, and we can get into this, is that I think that authorship, and this is with this whole branded search thing, I think authorship is going to become far more important. Google and the LLMs are going to be searching for unique voices with unique points of view, exactly like us.
Which AI will tend to diminish. If I ask AI to write me an article, it won't be my voice and the authorship will not be obvious. And Bill Slawski was talking about being able to recognize a patent, who wrote a patent from the style of writing a patent. And you have patent writers who write like Shakespeare, let's say, and then another one who writes like George Orwell. And he says, I can just read it, I can tell you who it is. And Google presumably is able to do that too. So what's the workaround to that?
Yeah, I can now read content and I know instantly whether it's been written by AI because I've just read so much of it now. A study just came out recently that they have discovered that the AIs essentially discriminate against non-native English speakers. Sorry, the AI checkers. So the text, what do you call it? Basically, there's all these tools like Originality. That will scan a document and say there's a 99% probability this is written by AI and this, not by a human. And what they found is that none of those are able to detect when a very basic non-native English speaker writes an article, because the perplexity of the words, the variety of the words that they use are far more straightforward. It's, the cat sat on the mat, whereas you and I, because we're native English speakers, we might be more creative with our word choices. The snazzy cat sat on the razzy mat. We might get a bit more creative with our word choices. I know, I'm such a poet.
Especially if we're copysmiths.com, we've got snazzy and razzy.
Yeah, exactly. So there's this bias that's in all these detectors as well. And I think that it shows that, and author, like AI is just now flooding all the SEOs and all the content mills, all of that sort of stuff. They are flooding the internet with very low quality content, which is perfect for a company like ours because, AI's just sort of moved everyone up a notch, but we were already here, and so AI's just moved us up to here.
And
So
anybody listening to the audio, not watching the video, Katrina has just put her hand very low, then moved her hand above her hand to indicate that Copysmith is way above everybody else in terms of the great content you're creating. That was what you said.
Thank you. That's a nice way of putting it. But I'm just saying that that's a very nice way of putting it. I'm just saying the baseline. All these people think that their baseline has moved. Well, I can tell you that the baseline of very high-end agencies or better writers or more creative writers, their baseline's moved as well. And I think that people.
So in fact, the playing field is still the same. It's just moved up a notch, and we're all competing where we were competing before, relative to everybody else.
100%. Absolutely
right. Okay.
correct.
Makes sense. And
the
other point that you were talking about with the fact that you have this bounce back between machines and humans and back to machines, then back to humans. And that's Andrea Volpini from Wordlift, who talks a lot about this. The dance between humans and machines is hugely important. Don't let the machine just run.
No. Yeah, it's we've not found a tool yet that produces something that I would publish under my own name. And that's always our benchmark. Yeah, that's always our benchmark. If I sort of think, well, I'm a steward of someone else's money, and if I look at it and I think, oh my gosh, I would never put my name to it, then I wouldn't put a client's name to it. And so we haven't yet found anything that can do that, that's truly creative and interesting. So one of the things that we do very differently is we try to make a very compelling introduction whenever we write, because if you lose the reader in the first 3 paragraphs, then there's no point. The rest of the article's wasted. The rest of the product piece, the rest of the content piece we've written is totally wasted.
Right. Yeah, we've been working with a lady called Leanne Summers, and she's come in and helped us with our content. She's brilliant. And first thing she did was tell me is that all of my articles start off with this kind of wondering thing that I think is hugely interesting. And she says, come in, grab their attention, make sure they read the rest of it. And it's changed a lot about the way we write content, but also the stickiness of the content we've got.
Yeah, hugely important. I think that, and it's making those connections for the reader between, say, a very complex topic. The stuff that you talk about with Kalicube is, what does it say? Rocket scientists think that rocket science is easy. I think you might have even said that to me at one point. And so your stuff to you is very easy, and you've connected all the dots and you understand it. But for someone like me who's just trying to get the first thread, and I think we talked about this before, is sometimes from you, I need just the first thread. And that's where this, Kalibot thing would be so amazing. If I could get a first thread of what you know out of an AI twin, then I can start my journey and investigate further into your field of knowledge. And then I can learn, and then I can relate it to my own. But it's that thread. Right. And so a compelling introduction in any kind of content piece always helps the reader or the listener grab that thread, and the thread's so important for the path.
Right, no, I understand. Sorry, I've actually just typed into Kalibot. Explain brand SERPs to an absolute beginner, and to see what it comes up with. And it says brand SERPs or brand search. Sorry, I'll start that again. Brand SERPs or brand search engine results pages are the results that come up when someone types your brand's name into a search engine like Google. Essentially, they're like your brand's business card on the internet. When someone searches your brand, you ideally want the first result they see to be owned, controlled, or highly positive about your brand. That can include your website, your social media profiles, positive reviews, and press mentions. And it carries on. That's very good. It's a bit boring, but it's very good.
No, it is a bit boring, but it's written in very plain language, and it's easy for
Kalibot's looking really upset that we just said he was boring or she was boring.
Yeah. I didn't say that. You did.
No.
I said plain language. It's written in plain language, which allows someone like me to pick up that thread of the idea and then to move through until it gets more complex. And then I can read your articles. And because then I'll have the basic terminology and I have the basic language and the basic understanding, your more complex personally authored content would make far more sense to me.
Right. No, yeah, 100%. I'm now very intrigued as to why it was so boring.
You need to increase the complexity.
I'm offending it again.
Yeah, exactly. You can ask it to increase perplexity and burstiness. Those are little sort of...
Is burstiness a real word?
Oh, yeah, perplexity and burstiness. So that just makes it, the word choice is more diverse, a little bit more interesting, basically. But you need to be careful because it can obfuscate the meaning. And sometimes people do just want something very simple as that first interaction with a brand. So particularly in e-commerce, if you're buying, like I need to get some, lighting for, when I go onto podcasts, I'm using some weird lamp that my husband's hooked up. And I've got a client who sells Aperture, who sell the most incredible lighting systems. And I've literally was thinking, you know what, I'm going to get one of my writers to literally write an article about that. And if I can buy a podcast light from that article, then we win. Like that's perfect. Yes. And so that's about giving someone like me access to, well, again, like break it down, like who am I and what is it that I need from this piece of information. And so I think to get back onto the topic that's where that's going to become more important for knowledge panels and branded search is the content, is the answer giving the requester what it is that they need from that interaction.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a huge point that I think a lot of us miss is, are we giving the reader what they actually need and want and what's going to be helpful to them? And the answer is often when we write ourselves, no. I often just write what I find interesting. And then somebody says to me, it's interesting, but it isn't helpful.
No, correct. And I think that's where branded search is going to come in. So we see all the time with our clients, they previously in the last couple of years, they've sort of said, oh, we'll write an article. What is a microphone? Okay. Yeah. And that is very low level SEO content that was just needed by Google and by, by people to just sort of say, well, that website sells microphones. What's happened with this baseline that's moved up is that we no longer need people to write what is a microphone type content. Right. They can certainly tweak it as always, but we can get the AIs to produce that content very, very quickly for us. And it's known knowledge and, there's nothing really to add to it. The holy grail now for our clients is when they type their name or their product into the search engine and they get more and more of those queries. And that is all about brand reputation and brand awareness. And so, and that dovetails into all the work that you're doing with that knowledge panel, because I believe that the LLMs and Google, for example, are going to be looking for better quality articles, better quality content that dives into more detail, not is what is a microphone, but what is a pink microphone with unicorn themes for an 8-year-old girl who wants to get into podcasting and video, etc. What's the best microphone for her? With AI, we can create all that content, but it's now got to have some sort of tone of voice to set it apart so that then there's brand engagement and then people type the brand name into Google. So that's where I think AI is going to go. That makes sense.
Which is hugely, hugely powerful for Kalicube. We're in exactly the right spot. And I was talking to Jarno van Driel about knowledge and LLMs and knowledge graphs talking to each other. We're right in the middle of that at Kalicube. So we're at the epicenter of everything that's now happening with search generative
you're so clever
with Google.
You're so clever.
Yeah, some people would say lucky. I've been waiting 12 years for this. But one thing I wanted to say is the machine now actually going to go into Pages, Google or Bing, look at it and say, well, could I have written that? And if the answer from the machine is, I could have written that myself, it's not helpful content for Google or Bing.
I don't agree. I think what's going to happen is, again, there's this thing about compute and power now being like, everything's just shifted to being data. So there's this fantastic article. I'll have to find it so we can put it in the show notes. I've just read it. There's this fantastic article about data now being, there's a massive shift. Before it was the software. When you had software, when you had a SaaS company, that was, the way to really make it big and to offer a lot of value to millions of people. It's subtly shifting at the moment to data. The LLMs are desperate for more data. They have to suck it up because that's going to be their moat. That's going to be their differentiator. Who's got the most data to create the best results? Now, if you've got an LLM that's just scraped the top 5% of the internet, which is all the AI junk, all the stuff that's found by the SEOs, you're going to get very predictable content about what is a microphone. Well, it's a metal thing with 3 legs and a tripod and a wire. Okay. So if you've got an LLM and you can get even more data and you can scrape right down to some really in-depth knowledge from a small microphone manufacturing company that's just come out with this new technology and you can barely find them, but the founder has written this seminal paper on how they've just totally changed the way that, I don't know, the microphone works. If you've got the ability to scrape down into that level, you win. Because suddenly you've added completely new information. So
So just coming back to what you said earlier on, and then I'll let you finish. But you said earlier on known information, known knowledge. And you're saying the power is in unknown knowledge.
Correct. And the only thing that can create unknown knowledge so far is these little meat bags that walk around on the planet. So the LLMs, the AI can certainly generate new knowledge, but I believe, I'm not an expert in this in any way, but I believe that they're a little bit away from creating new knowledge. I mean, they're very good at connecting the dots, but they can't sort of create new things because they don't, can't interact yet with the physical world. But imagine that, you can easily imagine that, a new company comes out and it releases a new type of microphone or a new podcast like Aperture. That it's exciting to see this new light that they have created. They have to make content about it. So they have to write about that new light and why it works and why it's amazing for whoever the podcaster might be. So content creation is not going away. In fact, we need more of it because it's another layer on top, because now we have the ability to forget about writing about what is a microphone, which used to just bog us down. Whenever we worked with a client, we'd have to start with, what is a microphone? It is this, it's got this and this. Well, what's this type of microphone? Well, it's a this. We can forget about that. Now we can just write about the really exciting stuff, which is, well, how did the founders get started and why did they create this microphone? What is it about the founders and their journey with this new microphone that they created? Right. And that's where the true authorship comes in. And the true tone of voice, the unique tone of voice that the LLMs are going to be looking for.
Right, and that's hugely interesting from our perspective. Is, for example, with how do you manage a knowledge panel? How do you get a knowledge panel? I asked ChatGPT, and it just got it completely wrong because it says what it's already seen on the internet, which is you have to have a Wikipedia page. And that's when I started training Kalibot, who now says you need an entity home, you need corroboration, and you need to signpost it, and you need consistency. So I taught Kalibot, but Google still doesn't understand how to build a knowledge panel if you ask Google. And that's unknown knowledge that I'm trying to feed in. And so what we're hopefully going to be able to do, and what we're all going to be doing, is saying, well, let's, as you say, take what's known, that's assumed, that's already there. Let's add value. Let's build the next layer. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about it. And you're this perfect example of, you create these new connections with the technology. You talk to so many people. So you create all these new connections in your mind. You come up with these new ideas. And so the LLMs are desperate to get access to whatever content that you're producing. Right. So it's incredibly important that brands produce new content. It's just got to be better content. And AI tools can't produce that kind of content. You still have to have a writer. And as you've admitted, you've got these fantastic ideas and they're fascinating, but sometimes they're not accessible to numpties like me. We can't understand what you're saying. So the combination of a writer with your thought leadership, a writer, and the AI tool to help discern complex ideas. So we could literally, I did this recently with Corey. He's got some very long SEO articles, very complex things with language I don't understand because he's made up his own terms and he's used language from patents that are quite old that I haven't read. And so it's very dense information. So I use ChatGPT to scrape all of his content and to create connections in between all his different articles so that I can start to get my own more nuanced understanding of what he's on about. And I would use it on your stuff as well. But, if you're going to get Kalibot released in the next couple of days, then I won't have to. But yeah, but you can see how someone who's able to be at the forefront of technology and is a real thinker, you can see how having a writer who can, like Leanne, can put in a compelling introduction to create those initial threads. So it's incredibly important. So AI is just for us at the moment in our industry, it's just a tool, like Photoshop was for sign writers. It's just a tool. You still have to know which font to pick, and you still have to know how to spell.
Brilliant. I love that. It's a great conclusion to the conversation about AI within, it wasn't so much the e-commerce space, but AI and content writing. So the last question now is this one. How can AI-driven content help branded search? Off you go.
So I think it's a consistent tone of voice. So branded search can help. Sorry, I'll start that again. How can AI-driven content help branded search? It will create more content at scale with a very consistent tone of voice, which allows your audience to pick up the thread of a conversation that might not be familiar to them.
That's brilliant. It's the shortest answer we've ever had, but it's probably the most clear. And I love the fact that we can use AI to be consistent about our brand, which brands very rarely manage to do. That's a huge, huge, huge plus for all of us. And I'm now going to steal that idea and use it at Kalicube. Thank you very much, Katrina. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, Katrina, for your huge insights there. And we're going to pass the baton to Craig Rodney. How to escape survival mode in your agency. I've spoken with him already about all this stuff, and he's absolutely brilliant. He's from Australia as well. So it's going to be super interesting conversation for anybody who owns, or even works in an agency. Could you possibly pass the baton, Katrina?
I would be delighted to pass the baton to Craig. I've actually just connected with him on LinkedIn. He's got this fantastic YouTube video that he's just released about how to escape survival mode in your agency. And I am really excited to hear what he has to say because it's perfect messaging for me.
It is, and it's perfect timing for Kalicube. It's going to help me escape survival mode, which is something we've been in for far too long. Thank you so much, Katrina. You get the outro song. A quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Katrina. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jason. It's been delightful.
Brilliant. Kalicube. It's all about your brand SERP.